Back in the late '60s, I was just a young punk in our first big evil polluting chemical plant, and I like to read popular science and popular mechanics and all this stuff. And one or the other of those had an article in there about computers, and it said that they expected that any day now somebody come up with computers that would get their programming off of cassette tape, which was the media of the day. And you wouldn't even have to know how to program it. You could just run programs on that computer right off that cassette tape. And that, struck my imagination as something I wanted to do. And so I told the guys I worked with it, about that. And I said, whenever they got these computers, I want one. And everybody looked at me like I had three heads, well, what would you do with it? And I said, I don't know, but I want one. Excuse me. So then I forgot about it for more than a decade, or a decade anyway. And one day I was overseas in the Arabian desert there, and I went up to the training department, and there was a guy. He had a TV set sitting there, and the keyboard, and he was pecking away on the keyboard. I stopped and looked, and there's a letter. He's writing a letter on that television, and I said, what is this? What do you got here? He says, it's an Apple II Plus computer. He says, I'm writing a training guide. So I stood around there and watched him for about an hour. I was just totally fascinated. And I had a brother that worked for Sylvania. He was an electrical engineer or something like that. And so I called him up, all the way long distance, and told him I want one of those computers. And I said, and I understand they got printers that'll print pictures. I want one of those too. And I said, you let me know how much it is, and I'll send you a check for the money. So when I went on my next vacation, he had bought me a computer, but he didn't buy me an Apple II Plus. He bought the clone, the Franklin Ace. It looked kind of homemade, but it had an IBM selectric keyboard and problems. The problems it had was that there was some cold solder joints in the power supply, which deviled me for most of the year sitting out in the desert. But anyway, that introduced me to computers, and I got interested in them. And the early days of computers was kind of fun. It was kind of like the Wild West there back in the late 70s and early and all through the 80s. Wasn't any internet or anything, and we had these wonderful 8-bit CPUs that you could use to make clunky, blocky graphics and write programs that could store your address book on a floppy disk instead of in a proper book. Of course, you'd type it all in and you'd lose it maybe. But mostly for the average guy, they were totally worthless and a lot of fun. And one of the things that come of it was bulletin boards. There'd be some guy have a computer set up somewhere answering the phone. You could leave messages there, and these are the days where trolls got started. There was Apple computers, and there was IBM clones and IBM computers. And the Apple guys were kind of like a religion, and they had Saint Wozniak and that sort of thing. And well, they were prime material for trolls, because trolls would go on with these bulletin boards, and they would leave a message that would inflame a person with a short fuse. And the resulting replies to that would be, terrible. These guys would become completely unwound. They were probably pounding their desk and frothing at the mouth, and the bulletin board operators didn't really know at first what to do about trolls. I mean, they were just, caught off guard. And there were some people, I ain't saying I'm innocent, and I'm not saying I'm guilty, that got a kick out of lighting a fire under these guys that had the short fuse, and would say just practically anything, pro or con, to your favorite subject, just see you light off. But anyway, I took up programming for fun and later for profit, but right at first mostly for fun. And these bulletin boards, as they developed, they'd have some guy would be the moderator, maybe 2 or 3 different guys. They'd help the guy that run it. They would look for people that was doing stuff they shouldn't do, and people who was pirating software and one thing or another, and correct up the problems. And if there was a message on there, they would read it, and they had to approve or disapprove. Well, I come along, I'm doing programming, and something that's important to people with computers is called American Standard Code for Information Interchange, or as programmers pronounce it, ASCII. That's right, I said ASCII. And it's a number representation for all the characters of the alphabet, like capital A is 65 in decimal and 41 in hexadecimal. And this is one of the other fun things. You can work with different base number systems, like you got binary, which is 0 and 1, or 1 and 0, whichever way you want to look at it. You got octal, which is a base 8. It goes from 0 to 7. That's all the numbers in that number system. And you got hexadecimal, which starts at 0 and goes to F. After you start, 0, 1 through 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, then it's A, B, C, D, E, F, So you can represent these characters of the alphabet a lot of different ways. The letter A in hexadecimal is the number 41, So being the kind of guy I am, and all I wrote a little program. I don't know if I wrote it in Pascal or some early version of BASIC. I don't remember. It's kind of foggy. But anyway, I had a little text box there, or whatever. You could type in regular words, regular messages, and then when I clicked the process button or whatever, it would convert all that stuff to either hexadecimal or octal or binary, So just to start off as a little test, I said, I bet you can't figure what this is, and I converted it to hexadecimal. I uploaded it to to one of the bulletin boards I frequented, and of course the moderator, he got busy and not to be outsmarted there, and he worked it out, figured out what it was, and so yeah, it's pretty clever, You wrote it all in hexadecimal, but I know what you said, So then next time I did it in octal, and he figured that out. So I said, well, it's time to bring out the big guns. So next time I did it in binary. That's when he told me I was going to get banned if I posted any more messages like that, because it took him too much time to figure out what it was. I said, well, I'll give you a copy of my program, and you can just cut and paste and know what it is. And no, he said, I'm not going to trust you to do that. He said, just don't do it no more, So there went my fun time. A lot of people said, well, you didn't write anything. It's just zeros and ones, or it's just a bunch of numbers, Oh well. Like I say, it was the early days of computers, and you had trolls, and you had the guys that were easily inflamed, and it was a lot of fun, and bulletin boards. I remember there was one place that you could play Doom online, Doom 2. That was way back there, huh? Anyway, you could dial into this dial-up network, and it was called Distributed Wide Area Gaming Organization, or DWANGO, And they had sort of like a lobby section. You could see what you typed. You could see what other people typed and such. And come to find out that you could backspace a bunch, and then, I'd say a certain number of characters, and then type your message, and it would look like the other person said it, because it would put your message by their name. And I had a lot of fun there, having a lot of these young folks say things they didn't want to say. Yeah, well, okay, so that was the beginning of computers before who invented the internet. And it was a lot of fun then, a lot more than now with all the spam and viruses and Russian hackers and stuff. Well, that's all, folks. Y'all try to subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Leave a comment if you got something to say. And above all, remember, keep on keeping on. Bye now.